What is up, everyone? I'm Ryan from Fireside Knicks, and the Knicks are coming off of their third straight loss, this time to the Los Angeles Clippers. They have a game tonight against the Lakers. They're going to go back-to-back. But, it's been a rough going as of late. The Knicks have fallen back to the sixth seed. Things have definitely not gone in their favor over the last three games. They've definitely felt the absence of Jalen Brunson, who, we probably won't have for the rest of this West Coast trip. But they got a big matchup tonight against the Lakers. They have a chance to kind of like put this skid to a stop and propel themselves into at least, taking the next two games and putting yourself in a position where, you can recover, you can get back, you can get healthy and get into that last stretch of the season. But with that being said, first off, Dylan, how are you doing? And secondly, what did you see from that Clippers game number one, and number two, what is going to need to happen for the next night in order for them to beat the Lakers outside of obviously like scoring more points than the Lakers?
Right. So I'm doing good first off, and secondly, I miss talking about winning a lot. Three straight losses is not fun, but we haven't had Brunson, so I'll hold out that optimism that when he comes back, we'll go back to our winning ways. But talk about the Clippers game, there was not much good about that game. Just to put it bluntly, they shot the ball horribly. To put it even more bluntly, they shot I think 35% from the field and 22% from three. It was one of their worst shooting nights they've had all season long, and just it was not a good game, flat out. It's one of those games you want to forget and put in the back of your mind if you're on the Knicks and if you're a Knicks fan alike. You don't want to be talking about this game because that was just not a good game. Julius Randle had easily his worst game of the season. He was 5 of 24. He picked up a tech late in the third that ended up being the swing in the momentum. So it was not a good game. It felt very reminiscent of the early season struggles, and with Randall's particular issues, it felt a little eerily similar to last year, which is some of the things that we are trying to put behind us and become a better team out of that stuff. So, of course you don't want to see that continue. Obviously, it's a long season. You can't expect everything to be perfect, but we just have to hope that they shake off this rust and come out tonight against the Lakers. It's a back-to-back, so obviously it's gonna be a little tough, but the Lakers won't have LeBron James, so they'll catch a break there. I know we probably won't still have Jalen Brunson, but we are gonna catch a break. They won't have LeBron, so they're also gonna be playing on demand. So hopefully we can rebound well against them, but they definitely need to step it up because yesterday against Clippers was just brutal. To be quite honest with you, it was brutal, and there's the only good thing you really can talk about with it was Quickly's performance. He played pretty well. He had 26 points, 10 rebounds. He didn't shoot the best. He was 8 of 18, but you can't really single him out when nobody on the team was efficient. It's unfair to do that. So with that regard, Quickly played pretty well, but just overall as a team, it was not a fun watch. You kind of had a feeling after as the game was going on, you kind of had a feeling it was going to slip away because the shots just weren't falling. I know sometimes it's just not your night, but it's been kind of something like that in these past three games. Brunson's been out. The shots haven't been falling as consistently. Things are not clicking as they were. And I know this again because Brunson's not on the floor, but that just kind of goes to show just how important he is to his team and why we paid Brunson a lot of money in the offseason because of how important he is to the team. And you can just see it right here with these three straight losses. We haven't had Brunson in either one of them, and they've just looked defeated, And I don't like to use fatigue as a factor, but it's definitely playing a bit of a factor. I think you could see it with Julius Randle, for example. He's played every single game. He's played the most minutes out of any player in the NBA. So I think you can see fatigue is setting in for him a little bit. These past three games, his energy has just not looked the same at whatsoever. And his shots aren't falling. Things are just not looking right. And his body language is not been the best. I think obviously we saw yesterday he kind of got into it with a security guard, and it kind of led to a technical foul and all this stuff. Just not a good look. It was too similar to last year, which is like I mentioned before, stuff we're trying to put behind us from last year. So I'm hoping that it was just a little blip in the radar, and that we can clean that up and get it out of the way and get back to our winning ways, very soon. Hopefully that starts tonight. But yeah, just to wrap up the point, they need to play way better than they did yesterday, because yesterday was that was bad. I'm just being completely honest. Usually I am not very opinionated about it, but that was not a good game whatsoever, and that's a game you really want to forget.
Yeah, I 100% agree. That was about as bad as it gets in terms of a loss. In terms of you feel like that's a winnable game. You feel like the Clippers didn't blow you out in terms of scoring, and you feel like that was a winnable game, and you didn't win it, right? So it feels like the same way with the Hornets game. Feels like this entire 3-game losing streak. If this team if this team was able to shoot a little more consistently, or just a play here or a play there, they'd be able to get themselves back on track. But I agree with your point about Julius Randle 100%. He's struggled as of late, but I don't think this is an indication that he's only good because of Jalen Brunson, but rather, again, it's his number one. The skill set is not for Julius Randle to be running an entire offense, and then number two, he might just be gassed, right? Like the dude's played every game, and he's playing 40 minutes a game, and he's really pushing himself here. He's probably fatigued. He's going in a little bit of a shooting slump. He had a really hot streak. He's kind of that stuff kind of happens. If you go on a really torrid streak, you're probably bound to go on a pretty cold streak right after to counter it out, right? That's just basketball. That's just sports in general. Am I going to sit here and am I going to say that his play is acceptable? No, right? But am I going to sit here and say that, his play is awful? Absolutely not as well. So, at end of the day, I have faith that the Knicks can turn things around. I have faith that this team can get the job done. But it's going to come down to their ability to. It's going to come down to their ability to put points on the board consistently without having those issues with without having those recurring issues. With shooting, as you mentioned, they've been inefficient, right? And that can't keep happening if you want to win games, especially against quality opponents. RJ Barrett, I feel like has really struggled lately as well. It feels like the points are there, but the efficiency still isn't there. It's kind of been a team. It's been a team thing. I know that Quickly had that one game where he didn't perform very well. But other than that, he still looks pretty good. But it just feels like the whole team is kind of a little bit off. And that's what happens when you lose your best player and you lose your, Jalen Brunson, right? He is the equalizer. He is what he spaces the floor. He, also creates an opportunity for Quickly to be with the second unit instead of the first unit. So you can't just run Quickly with both units. Players need rest. So, those minutes where you have to have McBride as your point guard, no disrespect to McBride, but he isn't the player that either of those two guys are. And he isn't the point guard that either of those two guys are. So you're already limiting yourself, not just in the scoring department, but in the spacing department as well. McBride is not a reliable shooter. So there's a lot that goes wrong for the Knicks when they don't have a guy like Brunson there. So you kind of have to look ahead a little bit here. You can't, if we spend, there's a lot of things that have gone wrong for the Knicks. There's a lot of stuff that we can continue to talk about. But this team has to look forward because end of the day, right? Like you can't, if you get hung up, if this team gets hung up over these losses, that 5th seed suddenly looks just as unattainable as the 4th seed looks. So, this Lakers game, as you mentioned, LeBron is out. So is Brunson. And the Lakers have played better lately. They're certainly not an opponent you scoff at. But, if you feel like that's a game you think you can get yourself back on pace with. It's ESPN Sunday night. It's going to be a big game. If the Knicks can steal this game here, if the Knicks can take this game, they're going to put themselves in position where the Nets are playing the Nuggets. If the Nets are to lose to the Nuggets, they take the 5th seed, and if the Nets are to beat the Nuggets, you keep pace, right? Which is just as important. And this game is huge for the Knicks. This is a winnable game. This game and the Portland game should be winnable games for the Knicks. Who do you think is the X factor here? Who do you think is the guy that has to step up tonight?
Right. So, big game against the Lakers, obviously. Like you said, the Lakers are playing better. So it's not just a washover, but they won't have LeBron. So they will have an advantage in that regard. But we also won't have Brunson. So, it's even set with that, I guess. But the guy to watch for, it's definitely Randle again. I always say Randle whenever we have this topic on a podcast, but he's the guy that needs to step up because right now, without Brunson, he's the guy we're going to. He's our go-to guy. He's the number one option. So he needs to step up. I know fatigue is setting in a bit. I tweeted this earlier, but it's kind of clear that he's fatigued a bit. I hate using that as a reason because at the end of the day, they still have a job to do, but it's clear that he is getting fatigued, but credit to him, he's still pushing as best as he can through that. It's not like he's not trying. It's just fatigue is setting in, frustration over these losses is setting in. You don't have your star players, so that also looms over a bit. That kind of changes the dynamic a little bit around the team, but he's the guy to watch for tonight without a doubt. He needs, if he can have a big game, not only will that help him feel better about himself, but it'll help the Knicks feel better about their chances of how they can hold these games and hold their own without their star player until Brunson's ready to come back. So Randle's the guy to watch for in my eyes. If he has a great game, then that can help get us a victory, a much needed one at that. Because I know, like you said before, Brooklyn plays Denver today. That's obviously a tough matchup for Brooklyn, but I think all of us are gonna be watching that game pretty closely to see how Denver does and if they can beat Brooklyn. Because if they beat Brooklyn and we can win over the Lakers, we go right back up to the 5th spot. So, we just need a big game out of Randle, I think. And RJ Barrett's another guy to watch for, because obviously he's our second option right now with Brunson out. So, looking at guys like that, just the usual typical stars to watch for. I think those are the guys you need to look at more closely tonight and see if they have a big game. I'm hoping we could get a big game out of at least one of them, if not both. I think if there's one other guy to watch for, it's also going to be Quickly because, the Lakers guard play defensively is not the best. I think a lot of us know that. They have D'Angelo Russell and Dennis Schroeder as their guard depth. They're not really good defensively. So, and I feel like Quickly's burst and Quickly's energy can help take advantage of the Lakers' lackadaisical guard defense and help provide more points. And with the way Quickly's been playing, I'm confident that he can do that. But just looking in general, the X factor specifically would be Randle because I need him to. I think we both here could agree we need him to really step it up because last night's performance, obviously what he's doing, we're not going to sit here and act like Randle's playing just off all year because he's been great all year. That's not to discredit that. He's been amazing all year. And maybe Brunson helped him be better at that. Maybe he did, maybe he did not. But whatever it is, Randle obviously is not looking the same right now. So like I mentioned, fatigue. Hopefully he can rest up a little bit, get some energy back today for this game, come out with a big game against Anthony Davis. That'd be also a good statement right there, doing it against a star power forward. So just to see what he does tonight, hoping he has a big game and, hopefully he can get that efficiency up because that's been his big thing. The efficiency's been down. So if he can hit his shots efficiently, then maybe we could be in for a good night tonight.
Yeah, I feel like the answer has to be Julius Randle. Julius Randle is the star of this team right now, right? Jalen Brunson's out. If Julius Randle can have that big game, if Julius Randle can have that game that he goes out and he drops 28, 29, 30, right? I feel like this team is going to win that game, right? I feel like if Julius Randle goes out there and he scores 25 to 30 points, obviously more would be ideal. You want as many points as possible. But if he scores between 25 and 30, and not 25 and 30 on 30 shots, a decently efficient 29 to 30 shots, 29 to 30 points. If he can do that, this team's going to win this game. I feel that confident I feel that confident in this team's ability, to win, to play well against a quality opponent, to, ultimately to do things that, quite frankly, a lot of NBA teams don't look at for the Knicks for, which is, being able to beat quality teams is something that a lot of people, have question marks with the Knicks about. I think this team can still do it even without Jalen Brunson. And that comes down to Julius Randle. He has the guys around him as well. Quickly is obviously, I think Quickly is the 6th man of the year. Maybe he doesn't get the award. Maybe Brogdon gets it. And I get that. He's on, a team with a better record, right? So that's going to kind of favor him, especially in NBA voting. But I personally don't think that should be the reason why he should get it. But that's a different argument for a different day. Grimes, I think, can still provide. I know Grimes from 3 has not been reliable. But I still think Grimes is good to give you a strong performance any given night. And then the most important factor here, in my opinion, is the fact that the Lakers don't have LeBron. And as you mentioned, the Lakers guard depth isn't great. And look, Anthony Davis is questionable for tonight. It's a game time decision. So, you might face a banged up Anthony Davis. I'm not sitting here and saying the Knicks should get physical with Davis and try to injure him. I would never say anything like that. But he is banged up, so he could be a little slowed down. The Knicks could have a little bit of an easier time with Anthony Davis. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see for how he performs in the game. But, in terms of the injury situation, the Knicks and Lakers are equally battered, right? Julius Randle has an opportunity to show he is the brighter star, number one. And then number two, the Knicks don't have a severe depth disadvantage, where I'd feel like that against the Clippers, especially against the Kings. The Kings are a very quality team, and that team just, without Brunson, this team really just couldn't keep pace with them. But this feels like a winnable game. And Julius Randle is the key factor here. I think there's really no other player that you can look at and say that they're going to be a standout factor. No disrespect to Quickly, but you're not going to look at Quickly and ask him to throw up 30-plus points. That's not fair to him. He's going to be more of a facilitator. He's going to be doing a million things. He's also going to be big on the defensive side of the ball. RJ Barrett's been a lot more inconsistent, and he's not this team's primary scorer. So, again, it comes down to Julius Randle. But with that being said, there is still that matchup against Portland looming. There is, the Lakers, and then it's Portland, right? So, do you think that if this team is able to grab these 2 wins, I think you can forget about those 3 losses in a sense. I'm not saying that those 3 losses don't matter, but you're going to have very short memory about those 3 losses. Do you agree with me in that sense? Do you feel like this team has to do more than that in order for you to forget those losses? How do you think this team has to respond to those 3 losses in order for it to be adequate, if you get what I'm saying?
Right. So, I don't disagree. If they can beat Portland and beat LA, you kind of do forget about those losses. I wouldn't go as far as say maybe forget about the losses, because those losses are a little significant in regards to seeding. But, you kind of feel better about the Knicks, because right now, we don't feel good about them. They've lost 3 straight. They haven't looked good, really, just quite frankly, at all in almost everything. So we don't feel good about them right now. But if they can win these next 2 and head back home on that note, you feel a little better. You'll feel a little better given that they'll have gone 2-2 on the West Coast trip. If they were to do that, you'll feel a little better. And hopefully, if we were to win these next 2, we could go back up to the 5th seed and come back home on that note. Once we get back home, we have a tough matchup against Denver. That's a tough matchup for anybody. Denver's one of the best teams in the NBA. That's a tough one. With or without Brunson, that's going to be tough. But just looking forward, I'm hoping they can close out the West Coast trip on a strong note. I know we say pretty much every episode, I hope they do this. I hope they do that. I do really hope they can do this. This is like a much needed next 2 games right here, because if you drop these next 2, you don't feel very confident about this team going forward, because then you go back to what we were earlier in the season when we won 8 straight and then followed it up with 5 straight losses, because then it would be 9 straight wins and then you followed it up with 5 straight losses. So you kind of just gave it back, right? So you need to kind of just, keep foot on the gas, keep winning these, get these games, knock out these next 2, win these next 2 games, I'll give them credit where it's due. In these losses, they haven't really been out of it ever. They've kept games close throughout the majority of the game. I know yesterday, late in the 4th quarter, it just kind of fell over, but throughout most of the game, they stay in it. They keep fighting given the circumstances they have to face right now. So I'll give them credit where it's due in that regard. It's just we need them to, they have to step it up. And, I don't think that's really something that can be disagreed upon. I think that's just something everyone can agree on, that they need to step up. 3 straight losses, you never want that. That's, that should be viewed as unacceptable, really, in the Knicks locker room right now, especially after what they just accomplished for the past 9 games before that. So I'm hoping that they can, turn things up a notch, have a better game tonight, because I think that'll set the tone for Portland's game. And if they can finish the West Coast trip strong with a win against Portland, you head back home on a strong note. You feel much better about the final stretch. You'll go into that 11 games above 500. If you win the next 2, you feel much better. I would personally think you would, and I would personally also feel better about where this team will finish in the standings. Hopefully they can finish 5th, but if they finish 6th, it happens. 6th was looking like the most obtainable spot, and then when we got hot, and it was like, oh, we can definitely get 5th seed now. So now we're kind of aiming for the 5th seed, but whatever happens. I'm just hoping they can have a good finish throughout this West Coast trip. And I don't want to look too far ahead, because if you do that, then you get too optimistic or too pessimistic, whichever one you choose to be. But looking just in the near future with the next 2, you just got to win these next 2 games. I think that's most important. Focus on this game tonight, and then focus on Portland after tonight, and just get ready. And they need to just be prepared and come out strong. Have good games from their stars. Shoot the ball better. Play stronger defense. Do all the things they were doing during the win streak. It feels like they've kind of taken a step back a bit in these past 3 losses, and I know part of that is because of A, fatigue, and B, because no Brunson. I think that's pretty agreed upon amongst most of the fans, but still, you don't want to see the team take a step back. You don't want to see this team become like what they were like last year, when everything was inconsistent. Julius Randle wasn't good really much of all last year. You don't want to see things like that. You want to see what this team was like during that win streak we just came off of, that 9-game win streak. That was the best version this team has been all season long, and you want to see that the rest of the way. Obviously, we knew the team would get cold at some point. Sports work that way. Teams get cold off of hot streaks. It happens. But obviously we don't want to see that. And when they do get cold, you want to see it end as quick as possible. So right now, I'm just hoping they can end it as quick as possible and get a good win against the Lakers tonight. And let's see where they go from there. Hopefully, it sets a tone for a good trip back home. The team feels better about themselves. We feel better about them. And, the confidence is just back. You want to stay confident, but you also don't want to get too ahead of yourselves either. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the way I look at it is you're just trying to build back momentum. And number one, the big point here that I want to get to is this team has battled back from adversity before. People forget this team was really bad to start the year. This team was well below 500, 25 games into the season, right? This team has to be able to, how do I put it? This team has to be able to respond to adversity because they can do it. I know they can do it. This is a competitive team. Obviously Julius Randle has to get his emotions in check in the game, but the way I view it, that's his fire or the way he carries himself is a net positive, in all things considered. This is a guy who's competitive. This is a guy who hates losing, right? This is a guy who hates losing more than he loves winning, probably, right? And in the sense, that frustration that he feels, that anger that he feels, I feel like this entire team has embodied, this gritty style of basketball that, with a modern twist, of course. Not like these guys are, going out there, not shooting the three, or doing things like this. Is a modern basketball team in that sense. They can space the floor decently well. They can do those things. But they just need to get themselves back in a rhythm. We've seen this team kind of swing the pendulum left and right all year. They go on a big winning streak, then they go on a bit of a skid. It kind of has bounced back and forth all year. This has been a pretty streaky team. They're in the midst of one of those bad streaks. It's just a matter of putting that to a stop. If you go from, you win 9 in a row and then you drop 3 straight and you win 9 in a row again and you drop 3 straight, right? Like that'll work, right? But you can't be, win 3 in a row and then, win 9 in a row and then drop like 7 in a row, right? Because that defeats the purpose of winning 9 in a row. You're just kind of bouncing up and down. So end of the day, this team just needs to put a stop to this kid. That's all. Do not let things snowball. Do not let things get worse from here on out. You got to put a stop to it here because you can put a stop to it here. These are 2 games where you put it to a stop. You win these 2, you go, as you mentioned, you go back home, you recover, you get yourself Jalen Brunson back, and then you restart again. And that's the way this team has to be able to look at it, right? These are winnable games. These are games this team can win. This team is more than capable of battling back. This team is more than capable of doing it even without Jalen Brunson. I've seen this team beat the Boston Celtics without Jalen Brunson. I've seen this team bounce back from really poor skids. I've seen this team, when everyone counts them out, come right back into it. There's no reason why this team can't do it again. But if you have any final thoughts, I'd love you to take the floor here because, quite frankly, this game is huge.
Right. No, you couldn't say it any better. This is a huge game. There's nothing more else to it, really. It's just a big game, huge game, and you gotta take advantage of it because LeBron's not playing. You mentioned Anthony Davis is banged up. Gotta take advantage of that. We're shorthanded, but you have to take advantage of what you're being faced with. And like I said, you mentioned if you win 9 in a row and then lose 3 in a row, win 9 in a row, lose 3 in a row again, you're fine with that, right? You don't want to be content with losing, but you also got to be realistic at the same time. But you also, don't want to keep doing that same consistently inconsistent type pattern, if that makes sense. You want to be consistent in a way, meaning like you are consistently winning games, you're consistently playing well each night. Your stars are consistently playing well. Obviously, bad nights are going to happen. That's just how things are. One night your star is going to have a bad night. Some nights, your team is just not going to hit the shots. Some nights, your team is just not going to play well overall. It happens, right? But you want to have a consistent team when you go to the playoffs. You want to field a consistent team, a consistent roster, a consistent, unit. You want to field that. So if they can just find that sort of consistency as this stretch goes, we thought we saw that with the 9-game win streak, but then they they lose 3 in a row. You kind of start to wonder, like, okay, are they just going to go back to that streaky way they've been all year where they win a bunch of games and then lose a bunch of games, win a bunch of games, lose a bunch of games? You wonder if they're going to go back to that. Let's hope they don't go back to that. This is, like you said, this is the one where they got to put it to a stop. Put that cold streak to a stop tonight. Simple as that. Win tonight, and that cold streak is gone. Now you could start a new winning streak, right? Because now you look at the standings, you won't have an L and a number next to you on the standings. You're gonna have a W and a number. So you win tonight, the losing streak is gone, right? You don't need to think about the losing streak anymore because now you've won a game. So you win tonight, put that losing streak behind you because you don't want to get lost in that. You don't want to think about that too much because then that hurts your team, hurts the morale, it hurts the confidence. Just everything goes down, right? So you stay confident. Hopefully win tonight, get a big win tonight. Hopefully they come out like hungry for a win because if they can like make a statement and get a big win, whether it's like a blowout win or even a close win down the stretch without their star player, that makes another statement. It makes a statement like yeah, we faced adversity, but we can overcome it. It's not easy. They never said it would be easy, but it's something they can overcome. So if they can just do that, then I'll feel much better about this team going forward. I will feel much better about it. Right now, my mind is still like unsure about where this team's headed because, quite frankly, me personally, I don't like this streakiness they do. I'd rather them just consistently win games, consistently, they're going to have their off night here and there. It's just realistic expectation, but I'd rather see them be more consistent in everything. I'd rather see the stars be consistent every single night. I'd rather see the wins come every night. I'd rather see consistent quality games be played every night. Win or lose, I'd rather see quality games every night. I don't want to see losses where like they just look flat on everything, where shots aren't falling, defense isn't being played, any of that. I don't like seeing that. Even if they lose games, I'd rather see some consistency. I'd rather see stars play well. I'd rather see shots fall, things like that. And I think consistency is the biggest thing that this team needs to figure out. It's been something they haven't really figured out all season long, quite frankly, because you mentioned they were a bunch of games under 500 throughout the first fourth of the season. They made the rotation change. Obviously, things have gotten better. You look at it overall, and you look at the record since the rotation change, and you start thinking like, oh, they've been playing really well. They must be a really consistent team. If you actually follow this team all year, you see that there are flaws, there are inconsistencies this team has. This team is by no means a perfect team, but they're a team that's capable. I think that's a big thing. They're a team that's capable of being a really good team if they can just, find that consistency. I think they've started to kind of slowly find it when Josh Hart came along, but I don't think they've necessarily found that consistency yet. I think these 3 losses kind of prove that point. They haven't really found it just yet. Hopefully they can find it before the playoffs so that way they can enter the playoffs, as a consistently good performing team because, playoffs is no joke. You got to win those playoff games. Obviously, if you want to go far, you got to play well in the playoffs. That's just a blanket statement, obviously, but, you just got to be consistent. Bottom line, consistency is the biggest thing. So be consistent, win tonight, turn it into something good. Finish out the season strong. They got I think after tonight they'll have 12 games left in the season. So not much time left to get that 5th seed or 4th seed if they really want it. There's not much time left. It's closing down. That window is slowly closing. So they got to do something now. Things have to change right now. They can't keep, falling in that little abyss that they've been falling into. They can't keep doing that. They got to change something right now. Today is the day that they turn that around. They get rid of that losing skid and they go right back to what they just were. Throughout all of February.
Yeah, I think you put it perfectly. The streakiness of this team can be a bit infuriating, especially when you're trying to think about a postseason environment. All it takes is the Knicks deciding, or not deciding, of course, not like they're deciding to lose. All it takes is the Knicks, entering the postseason on a poor losing streak and your first round exit. On the other hand, all it takes is this team entering the postseason on a hot streak, and suddenly they are on their way to the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, that's evident with any postseason. Teams get hot, teams get cold. That's how teams get upset, or that's how teams, pull off upsets. But you want to find a little more consistency. You want to find a little more, consistency. Just a little bit more crisper, tighter play. Now, I feel like that's inherently what happens when you don't have an MVP caliber player, right? You're kind of punching above your weight a little bit sometimes. But end of the day, as you mentioned, just get the monkey off your back. You get this win tonight, that suddenly that losing streak is no longer there. You're not, the conversation isn't, can the Knicks bounce back? It's a 4-game losing streak, 3-game losing streak. It's however many games. Now it's the Knicks have won. They look to continue their winning streak. You no longer feel like you need to get that monkey off your back because 3 losses in a row can become 6, can become 7, can become 8, just like how 3 wins in a row becomes 7, 8, 9. So, end of the day, this team is capable of getting things back on track. It's just a matter of, finding that consistency and being able to do it without, and having people step up without Jalen Brunson there. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for checking us out. You guys have been great with the support lately. We appreciate your guys' continued, viewing. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we're all over the place. We're of course on YouTube. This is where you're watching us. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm Ryan Garcia. That is Dylan Backer, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.